Hello and welcome. Today we've got Tarot by Janine, and we'll be speaking about lawsuits and the mainstream media and much more. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to our Telegram channels and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave a link below in the description for the full interview. Janine, thank you for joining me. And how are you? And what's been happening with you?
I'm really good, Nicholas. Veniamin. Did I say it right?
You got it perfectly right.
Oh, good. And
it's okay if you don't get it right. Don't worry, it's fine. It's not the end of the world.
It takes me a while. I'm doing really good. Actually, I have a really interesting, I have company here from Tasmania. Okay, so they traveled here and they don't have, passports. It wasn't necessary. Nobody asked them for any such thing. And it was just really interesting to hear their tales of how they got here and just what they had to go through. And it just leads into so many things are being stepped away from, and so many things are not as bad as what you think they're going to be, or you're hearing that they are. I really feel like times are changing and you're just not being told about it. People are just not being told about it.
So, so do you want to tell us a little bit about the process of how they traveled without the nuisance with the government?
Yeah. So, just they needed several tests, unfortunately. Now, the interesting thing about these, I don't know what words we can and can't say, but so the illness, things that tell you if you have it or not. Okay, we'll call it that. Okay, we're going to be really careful. Okay, there's so many lawsuits that have been brought against that very thing, which has more or less been proven, in particular in this huge lawsuit that was brought up in Berlin. And Canada has also made huge headways in our highest courts, proving that and making these health officials, government health officials, say out loud that they don't have the science to back up any kind of health emergency, just for starters. Okay, and then also that these tests that test you for if you have an illness or not, or the illness, okay, are not actually created to work very well. In fact, they have a 97% false positive. Okay, so those are the sort of things that are being brought up in lawsuit after lawsuit. And I believe the whole stepping away from even using those tests is going to happen from these lawsuits. And more and more people are hearing about lawsuits being brought and won. Okay, so look into your own country and have a look at anybody who's viewing this. Just look around. You'll probably have to use DuckDuckGo, or you probably can't Google, what lawsuits are going on, because of course, mainstream media is repressing the information. Okay, but it is, so anyway, they jumped all those hoops and had all kinds of ways. Sometimes they were even able to say no, but of course, a lot of places they weren't able to say no. So getting doctor's notes saying that, this is really bad for our son's health. They have a small child. He can't possibly wear that mask, blah, blah, blah. Like just getting paperwork in order and thinking ahead. Okay. And having things ready. Okay. And feigning that they might have some, symptoms, got them out of a lot of tests where they had to pay. Okay. So that way they would be rushed through. And interesting, then they would get negative ones. So it's like, okay, but they're having symptoms, and that way they didn't have to pay, because otherwise think about how much money Big Pharma is making from just those tests alone. And if they all get proven to be 97% false, like positives, okay, and that's what they're bringing to these courts, and that's what's being proven over and over. So when they get enough of that and it leaks out enough, there's no way they're even going to be able to have those. The whole the whole I'm going to say scam around these things are what's actually creating all the hype around the supposed variants, the supposed actual thing itself. And if it gets proven to be that these are absolutely false and they can't actually isolate any, illness, they haven't actually isolated it. Okay. And so therefore that makes the thing in your arm null and void. All of these things are taking down the narrative one stone at a time. And even the people that you're meeting at airports, officials and whatever, kind of seem to know is what their feeling was, that this is all just a narrative and we have to jump these hoops. So they jumped some of the hoops they got away with. They just pushed it. When they felt like they couldn't push it any further, they backed off. Okay. And used politeness and love and sent love. And they made it here with very few, the things that test you. And here they are in Canada, traveling around.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right?
So do you just want to give the viewers a list of the countries that are filing these class action lawsuits for this, situation, please?
Mm-hmm. In particular, Germany, in particular, Canada, and in particular, the US. And because those are very big countries, and I know there's lots of other really big countries, those things are going to make a big difference, right? And especially the one when it comes out and into like it's been really repressed in the US that this is happening. And don't forget that the US has laws. They still have laws where people can personally bring litigation against huge corporations, more so than any other country. The US has that. Okay, which is really interesting. They still have rights. We still have rights. You have to exercise them. The woman that spoke out, so the nurse, she was a doctor, a Black woman, and I believe it was in New York in particular, but she was really speaking out against the illness itself, and also talking about cures for the illness that are very inexpensive. I won't say the name of it, starts with an H. Okay, she was especially speaking out against, speaking about that and bringing that to people's attention and telling them exactly how they could find it. And of course, that all got repressed. And she got really big. She got really slammed down, especially by CNN. And she's bringing a huge lawsuit against CNN for basically calling her a liar and, not telling the truth, when in fact, it's absolutely proven that she's correct. So in other words, they're the liars. Okay. So she's bringing a lawsuit and for hundreds of billions of dollars, apparently. Okay. So look around who's bringing these lawsuits, because they're happening, I think, in a lot more places than just what we're hearing about, but those three countries in particular. And the more people that get on board with these kind of things, if there's one in your area where you can get on a class lawsuit, get on it. Just get your name in there, because we've all been affected by, what they've been doing here, taking us out at the knees, in particular, the middle class, in particular, just people trying to create their own businesses, in particular, people that literally are some of the hardest working people on the earth plane. Those are the ones it seems that they're attacking.
So what kind of an effect do you think this would have when we look at the class action lawsuit that Mr. T is filing as well?
Mm-hmm.
When we look at it collectively, how do you think this could turn out?
Well, I think they won't be able to repress the knowledge. Even though they're losing some of them, they're winning some of them. Okay. And they're actually getting, like, for instance, in Canada, they actually got the high government official of health, and I can't remember their exact title, and there's one in every country, to admit that they don't have the science to actually even call this a medical emergency. It's not a medical emergency. So now they're using all of these flimsy little laws in various different provinces here in Canada, for instance, okay, to try to keep And they also didn't tell the people that was seen in a court of law. Okay. So people are still walking around with things over their face and whatever, but actually stores have taken down all of those signs. I've been to two different provinces in Canada lately, British Columbia and Alberta. And in Alberta, there's more and more people not wearing the coverings, but in BC, British Columbia, they're very far left over there. They're like almost like a miniature California in their politics, it seems. Okay. And I saw signs, and I was calling them out on Instagram, where they'll actually say, we know the government ruled you didn't have to do this, but we still want you to. So, you still want to take away our rights as a small business? So it's like they're biting the hand that feeds them, because it's the people that now they're going against, because they've been so brainwashed. And these are little individual businesses, but also some really large businesses. So I was busy. Take pictures of people doing that, take pictures of their signs, put it on Instagram. We need to not support people that would actually continue to support virtue signaling. Meanwhile, even their own government admitted that there wasn't a health emergency. Right. So look into it, because this has been hidden from us. And the more it comes out, the more the thing gets stepped away from.
Absolutely.
They can't hold you to these things if the high courts ruled that there wasn't a health emergency.
There was a doctor the other day, not a doctor, a news reporter the other day who was saying how corrupt the media is. And I think that was in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. So where do you think we are right now with the mainstream media crumbling? I mean, do you think it's crumbling? Do you think that more truths are coming out? Do you think, are we seeing progression?
Oh, yeah. My opinion is they've been infiltrated from all angles, just like they did for, hundreds of years, maybe since the very beginning of what you could call media. It's been that shadow media that's deep state. I believe that the good guys have done the very same thing, and they've created infiltration on all levels to all of these sort of agencies, news agencies, and they're starting to sneak their own positive, or at least like soft exposure programming. And some of it isn't even so soft. Like some of it's almost like throwing a bucket of water on your face kind of stuff, right? Like just looking at just some of the things that have been coming out lately, I feel like they're letting things slip, but I don't think it's a slip. I think it's purposeful. Mm-hmm. Just to help people sort of their unconscious pick up on it, because if they're too obvious about it, people might not be quite ready for that. But as things sink in, at some point, your unconscious will just click. It's almost like it'll click on. And I think that's what they've been up to with the sleepers. I think they've been like just letting these things sink in and sink in. I mean, they did it with that September date that has a 1 and a 1 on it, right? They did it with that huge psyop. Eventually, almost everybody I know, even deep sleepers, would have to admit that likely wasn't presented the way it actually happened. What happened there?
So I had a friend message me the other day saying to me, Nicholas, they're going to be vaccinating the children in the schools. And I say, I say, first of all, I don't know. It might not happen. I don't know. But if that's the rumor that's going around, I'm thinking this could be a white hat operation.
Yeah.
Dismantling the schools.
Yeah.
Dismantling the schools in the matrix system, because originally the schools and universities were created as a brainwashing tool.
Yeah.
So now it could be, it could be used to destroy the system with their own agenda, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that? What does your card say about that?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a card question?
Yeah, we'll look at the card. Yeah, because, think about it. The children and saving our children, people will put that even before their own well-being. So they may give up their rights if they're truly asleep and haven't done any research and just have been hearing a few scary stories about the cure, okay, because they want to keep their job or whatever, okay. So they might fall for that. But when it comes to their children, they're really rising up. Like in the US, the amount of people showing up, while school was in, it's been out now for about a month, but while it was in process, people were showing up at meetings and absolutely calling the people at these meetings to task on their draconian rules around children, around the mask wearing, around all kinds of things, around these sexual education with really, really young children, just everything starting to really sink into these parents. And it's like, wait a sec. Okay, so everything's coming out. And pretty soon, I think people will say, okay, I just won't put my child in school because I don't trust this thing for my child. Okay, but let's have a look and see, what does the universe say about it? Because that's a good point, Nicholas, that maybe this will be the
I want to just throw this in just before you give us the answers with the cards, because it might work well with the card. But isn't it funny that at the same time we have Trump, Mr. T, telling us that he's for school choice. So he's going on about school choice. And at the same time, schools are being dismantled. People do not want to send their children to school. There's millions of children now not going to school because their parents are afraid of taking this thing in their arm, the experimental thing that hasn't been passed by the 3-letter agency. It hasn't been passed. It's been passed as an emergency use only, which means we are an experiment. And I'm sorry, but our children will not be an experiment.
Exactly. And people definitely need to remember that. Just remember you're in front of your kids. And you need to think about that, right? And I know everybody watching, we're preaching to the choir here, right? But if more and more people stepped away from the system, like you said, I really think that might be the plan. That might just exactly be a white hat op. But let's have a look. So there's a lot of secret things going on in the background, which, indicates maybe an op of some kind. Okay. And then here we've got the 9 of Cups. So it's there's a desired outcome. And the desired outcome is for people to use their noggins and be independent. So this is not a draconian desired outcome. This is not a bad guy desired outcome. They're wanting people to think individually for themselves and make a personal choice to step up for their own children. I think it's part of the spiritual lesson in this spiritual sort of shift. It's like a huge shift. I don't even want to call it a WAR. I don't want to call it that anymore because that word's too, I don't want to make that true. So we have to be so careful with words, right? I think it's a huge spiritual shift. And we're spiritually, shifting into realizing how incredibly powerful we are and how we can empower ourselves and just exactly how to do it. And we can't let everybody just do it for us. We actually have to step up for our own children. Think about the Pied Piper story. You know the Pied Piper story? The reason the Piper took all the children was, long story short, obviously there's a lot more to the story, but the reason he did was because the parents weren't paying attention to their children. So he took the children. So that might have even been the nod that the dark cult needs when you're not paying attention to your children or they don't believe you are. So they've already created all of these ways for us to give permission through schools by not looking into what are they teaching our children, by not looking into when they say sex education for grade 1s, 2s, and 3s, or even 4s and 5s. Okay, why is that? And what exactly are they meaning by that? Not to say that children shouldn't learn about it and be empowered. Absolutely, they should. Okay, but definitely not at those young, impressionable ages and with the kind of stuff these guys are bringing in there. They're literally grooming them to be used. Okay, so this is the thing that parents need to actually pay attention to. And the Pied Piper took all the children from the village that he took them from because nobody was paying attention. And that's exactly, it's like, remember that Belanoff, so Somerset Belanoff's her favorite she was obsessed with the story of the Pied Piper, apparently. Okay. Because why? Because possibly that was a true story of early dark cultures stealing a whole village of children because they believed in their sick, twisted, everything's inverted minds that they had permission to do that. And that's what they've been trying to do. Get us to give our permission to have younger and younger consent from children. They're putting laws through like that and nobody's yelling about it or hasn't been, right? We got to start going, wait a second, that is not cool. 12-year-olds can't give consent. 13-year-olds can't give consent. You know what I mean? So they're doing all of these things because they spiritually need consent. And this feels like what the white hat ops trying to do is get us to go, wait a sec, let's think for ourselves. This person thinks for herself and takes care of her own needs. She's absolutely independent. So they can't do it for us, but they're trying to teach us to do it for ourselves with these things.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got one friend of mine. I won't mention her name just to keep her anonymous, but she has a child who's in a care home. She, she has psychological issues, and she's disabled. So, and the mother doesn't want her child vaccinated, and she's very awake. She's given all of the paperwork. She's followed all the legal process to show this evidence. And now finally she has a court hearing, but it took in October, but it took her forever to get a court hearing. And the one before, the court threw it out. They didn't even want to give her a hearing. And this is disgusting because they're overriding what the parents want for their children. And now the governments are telling us what we should do with our children. And if we disagree, we're a bad parent and we don't have the best interest for our children. I mean,
exactly.
This is a big, fraud. Sorry. It's huge. It's terrible. It needs to stop. This is hell on earth, and we need to reverse that. And we are. And I want to say we are. The fall of the cabal is happening with the media, with the lawsuits, with everything being exposed. Platforms like mine and yours, we're going, and it's great. And we love the truth, and more people are on board now.
Yep. It's changing.
Absolutely. It's changing. Yeah, definitely. So go on.
I was going to tell a little story that kind of gave me proof that there's good, I think, off-worlders working with us, because something really strange happened. Can I tell that story?
Yes, please. I would love you to. Okay.
So I've only told the story to my camera guy who helps me on the Tarot by Janine channel. Anyway, I came up to this intersection. So just like regular, it was the middle of the day. Okay, this would have been early spring. And all of a sudden, there was all of these cars, like too many, like it seemed like 4 or 5, and there was only 3 lanes coming up to this intersection. Okay, so 4 or 5 cars. So they were taking up sort of way too much space on the road. Okay, and all of a sudden they were all behind me. It was very strange. And the cars were all blacked out windows. And they weren't black though. It was interesting. The cars themselves, they were kind of an odd metal sort of silvery color. And then they all had darked out windows that were almost the same silvery color, but you couldn't look in. So it wasn't like black, SUVs or whatever, like maybe they had important people they were hiding in there. It was different than that. So these cars, and they were all looked identical. And all of a sudden they were behind me, and the rest of the traffic, we all moved over, and it was almost like a mind control thing because I didn't think about it. I just moved over. I was practically up on the sidewalk. So did everybody else. And one by one, the cars that all came up behind us went through the intersection. The light was red, but they went through the intersection because everybody on all sides, it was quite a busy intersection in Calgary, had done the same thing. We all moved out of the way. There were no sirens. But it was weirdly mind control because I felt like I was in automatic pilot and I wasn't thinking, I was just doing something that I just knew I had to do. So I did the thing and I wasn't questioning anything. And then all of a sudden they all went through one at a time and then everything went back to normal. And it almost felt like time stood still. And we were all programmed to do something. Mind control was happening. Wasn't like a bad thing, though. I checked in with myself and it felt like whatever those guys are doing, it's really important. I mean, it could have been being used for bad, but I check in with my intuition. And when I got home, I did some cards on it and it looked like they were up to a big operation, which we know there's been a lot of around, especially where I live in Alberta. It's even Gene Decode's always talking about what's going on in Alberta, Canada. It's like, I guess we're almost as bad as what goes on in Australia as far as underground activity that's nefarious. Okay, so this could have been an operation like that, but it was so interesting that there's technology on the earth plane and energies on the earth plane that can't be explained. And we're not talking about it maybe because, and it probably happens a lot more often because they're doing something to our minds. And it was almost like I forgot all about it, but then I made a conscious effort to remember. It was like my mind wanted to just dismiss it. So maybe we're even being erased or something, but I have a feeling I hung on to it just because I needed to tell people. It's like some stuff's going on here, people. And all of that stuff that we keep talking about is not just fantasy. There's things being cleaned out. There's off-world help and there's off-world bad guys here. This world is not what we thought it was. And it's real and we're in this and we all just need to stay aware, loving each other, sending out love vibration and just try to be really mindful and purposeful and pay attention. We can't be sleeping here through this.
Yeah. Wow. No, absolutely. I wouldn't put it past that. Definitely, this world is not what we thought it was.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how old or young you are. This system and the people that run this world is so corrupt, and they've brainwashed us from every angle.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought there. I was just about to say something there, Janine.
Darn.
It's going to come back to me. It's going to come back.
I did a quick look on the cards about what happened there. So they were keeping us out of harm's way because they were doing something for the good of, that's my good of humanity card. And it has something to do with children.
Right.
So rescuing children, and they'd been working on it for a really long time and it couldn't be avoided. It looks like it was part of an operation that was almost finished, and it couldn't be avoided that in the middle of the day, for whatever reason, they had to get through that intersection and they had to let themselves be seen. Because I know a lot of this they've been doing under cover of night, etc. But I think that was just a necessary thing. It's part of the tidy up, it looks like, from those cards.
Mm. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yesterday, someone said to me, one person from the public says to me, we were talking about all of this stuff that we're talking about. I know you're going to put this on YouTube, so I want to try and be careful with my words. But he says to me, do you think there's a glitch in the system? What do you think he meant by that?
Finally, we're seeing through the programming, and that could be the glitch, right? So the veil's lifted, and that could even be astrological, like it's just karmically time for humans. So you could call that a glitch, because literally we have been in a matrix and we didn't even know it. Okay, at least I didn't. Not some people did. Some people say they knew it for 20 years. Which is fascinating. But about 2 years ago is when I started going, wait a sec. I never did really trust governments, though, I got to tell you. And I certainly didn't trust church and or Catholicism and or higher like religions, all their higher ups. I never trusted them. I always felt there was something going on there that could have been past life experiences where I had really personal experiences with the dark side of those guys. So I was on to them, but I certainly wasn't on to all this other stuff, not to the level we think we know now. Like we're probably just scratching the surface, is my experience in that intersection tells me we're definitely just barely knowing what could be going on right in front of our eyes.
I agree.
Probably happens a lot.
I agree with you. I think there's so much more. We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I wanted to say was also just wanted to let the viewers know is, when there's a nuclear, when there's a bomb and then there's a radiation and we get affected by that radiation.
Yeah.
When we love, that's the radiation or the frequencies that we send out. And that's a threat to the deep state because they feed on bad energy, negative energy, don't they?
Absolutely.
We need to love. We need to put words out there, affirmations that we are worthy. We are true to ourselves. We respect ourselves. We love one another. We are happy. We have to remind ourselves and count our blessings because this is what access the portal to the universe and allows us to manifest things that we want to here on earth. And that's the gift that God gave us.
Yep. When I first started looking into, I'm going to just mention Belanoff again. So Somerset Belanoff, when I first started looking into her, the reason I'm so curious about her is she actually has the same birth date apparently as me, May 1st. Now, we're not sure about her year. I think she's older than me. I'm at 1961, but I'm not sure about her. But it's fascinating to me when I first started talking about her and looking into her, because so many people are so fearful of her and they won't even say her name in very high up places, right? Vladimir Putin and maybe the original Vladimir, because I'm definitely sure that new guy hasn't been Vladimir for some years. But the original Vladimir apparently said one of the scariest people in the world to him was her. So that's pretty interesting because he's a pretty scary guy himself, or had been known to be at that time. But people would write me and say, well, aren't you afraid of her? Her energy's known to really come after people that go after her. And I said, no, because if she comes anywhere near my energy, I'm just going to send her so much love and curiosity, literally childlike curiosity. It's like, wow, what made your demon self think it was okay to be a demon? You're fascinating. Just open your heart chakra and just look at them through the heart chakra and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Janine, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on again. I just want to let the viewers know that I'm privileged to have Janine every 2 weeks. So thank you. It's been wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Let's pull a little quick look at what the universe wants to say, since we're so in such times, right? It's just
absolutely. And it's August the 2nd.
What's that?
It's August the 2nd.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And what they have a word for August. It's supposed to be I know. It's like a big turning point month, which is like so needed right now. We just need the flip.
Which was the last speech that we saw of Mr. T at the turning point.
Yep. Okay, let's have a look. So the good guys making way more of a show. So this is like the beginning of these guys being obvious who's really in charge, which of course, everybody viewing this will likely already know that, right? But we're talking about people that don't know that, because a lot of people, and it's saying they've been very careful not to expose that just yet. I've been calling it a shadow government everywhere, and I'm getting more and more proof about that. It's incredible, right? So this card's saying they are literally daily checking in when they could expose that entirely. So I feel like that's the reseeding is possible to happen this month of Mr. T, as we call him. Yeah. And also exposing everybody who came forward and went from, I feel like we're going to get a whole bunch of information about stars that we thought passed over, but actually went over to the good side and falsified them passing over. We might even, some people from our past that we thought were gone could show up this month. Well, that would be great, because we've all been talking about there's certain figures that we're pretty sure are still with us. And we've been told they were by that 16 plus one letter of the alphabet, right? So that'll be interesting. So August looks pretty exciting, actually.
It does. We just have to wait and see, but it's very good. I just know that it's all going to fall into place. We just don't know when, but my soul tells me it's going to happen.
Me too.
It's going to happen, but
yeah.
Tarot by Janine, thank you so much. It's been wonderful, and may God bless you, and we'll speak again in 2 weeks' time, okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Nicholas.